Hello, and welcome to Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and you're listening to episode number 82 with Agnesh Pakozdi, DP of Pitch Perfect Bumper in Berlin. Enjoy.
Yeah, I was born in Hungary back in the Cold War, basically. And then I grew up there. I went to school there. And my parents basically were the first generation in a liberal country and like free market. So they were really going for, you have to get a proper job and this is your future and everything. So basically what was interesting that art was absolutely not a way to go for me back then. And I'm an economist originally. So I studied economics.
I saw that.
And,
That was a parental thing. They were like, you better get a real job.
I better get a real job, and I had no other option. So come on, no, you can do it. No, the world is free. You gotta study economics and something. And I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
But then it was so culture was always like very important as a hobby. Damn. So we have a black sheep in our family, my aunt, who left the country in the 70s, and she became a photographer in Paris.
Oh, wow.
And mostly black and white photography. So that was my hobby as well as a teenager, but it just can be a hobby. So like theater, movies, everything. Very nice. You should know everything, but as a hobby. And then during my studies, I kind of realized that what if I studied my hobby just as a hobby? So then I picked up a faculty secretly, which was film history and film theory. It's still back in Budapest. And in this faculty, I mean, we watched everything from film history. Like, it was actually a great faculty. But we had one practical seminar back on mini TV. And we had like 3 spotlights and we were just shooting exercises. Like it was not, the goal was not to teach us how to make films, but we had amazing exercises like figure out a short story, make it with cuts and without cuts. But like we didn't have an editing software back then. So it's like editing in the camera. So we had the tape, the mini TV tape, and like, okay, you are 3 of you and you have a weekend to do it. So like, for example, a story, couple is making out, the husband is on the way home, whatever.
Right.
And how do you do it? With edits and without as a plan sequence. And we just every week, basically we had exercises like this. And then I understood like actually it makes fun to do this. And then I realized that I also would like to study abroad. So I found a great scholarship in Berlin at the University of Arts, which was more video art. So it was not my film school yet, but it was also interesting. That's the first time I met the 16mm. But we were doing arty things. So you went out with the 16mm alone or with someone to help you to load the film, and we did art. And during this year, when I was already in Berlin, I was like 23. So they had 22, 23. I was like, I figured out that there are 2 film schools in Berlin, like state schools. One was back then the East German film school and the West German film school. So they have both different backgrounds, different profiles. And I just started to work on set as a set runner, as anything. I just wanted to look around like, okay, how does that feel like? And I realized that maybe it's more fun to work in a crew rather than running around alone with a camera and do your art.
Right.
Which I don't look down at. Absolutely. I love that as well. But it just made fun to be able to do something bigger in a crew.
Yeah.
So then I applied to the Film Academy and they took me, and then I never went back to Budapest. So
it's, you know, what's crazy is like I feel like back in the 90s or early 2000s, all film teachers across the planet were reading from the same book, because that's like exactly what I did in high school. And I went to New York Film Academy in Los Angeles, at the Universal Backlot. Same exact thing. Make a we had the DVX 100. They're like, do it with they didn't have us do it with no cuts, do it with cuts, but they did have, like, I remember specifically one lesson where they were like, do the entire short in one shot, putting us on 16 and 16 millimeters smelling like fish bait. If anyone's listening who knows the smell of power bait, that's exactly what 16 millimeters smells like out of the can. That's a lot of fun. So was going back to the idea of actually, so I was talking to Eric Messerschmidt yesterday, the guy who shot Devotion and Mank and Mindhunter. And he kind of echoed what you were saying about how people can kind of get, I'm putting words in his mouth a little bit, but we were kind of talking about how people can get caught up in the going out and making your own art. Whereas for him, it seemed the working togetherness of film was far more interesting. Being a part of a team and working towards a common goal was way more of the reason that he got into film. And I think it's the reason a lot of people, I'm just thinking about this now, but like I think that is like kind of one of those dichotomies of people, right? Like someone who's like, I'm going to be the director. You always met that kid like who wanted to be in charge. And then there's people who like, well, I want to be part of a team because I want to do that instead of, working in a bank.
It's a very, very good point you are touching there, because I go back to my story and like changing the system. We are the new generation. We have the new future back then, and like I realized that being an economist would mean that I think about profit in a sense. And yes, of course, we establish here a new system now, and I could be a part of it. But somehow, what was my other drive is I wanted to make this world better with like other tools, and that's still my drive. And basically, this working together absolutely makes sense, because also at the film school or outside the film school, I always find my collaborators based on our common interests, or what do we want from this world? Why do we do this? So as a cinematographer, of course, by time, so I didn't climb the ladder in the classical way. Like,
sure,
I did everything. I was lighting electrician. I was a first AC. I was a gaffer, but I didn't go through the classical way. But my drive was like, I really believed and still believe, but in a different way, that we can change the world by that, and we formulate important values by putting it in an exciting and challenging form. And that's what I love the most about my profession. So like the techniques, everything came later in my case, but that was the drive, like how to tell the story that it's relevant, what do I want to talk about. And as a cinematographer, you have a huge responsibility in that, because on one hand, everything is told already. It's a cliche.
Right.
On the other hand, we always try to be very innovative and put it in a new form. And of course, we reflect on what is going around us. A lot of things is happening around us, so there is never enough to reflect on. And I love this brainstorming with a director together. Okay, what is the right form for what we want to say? And that is the origo of my work, and that always have been my origo for my work. And in these terms, just to jump a bit ahead to Pitch Perfect, it's a new level, because because my way was again a completely different way how I ended up shooting this 2 episodes in Bumper in Berlin. But still, the drive is the same, and it doesn't make a difference even if it's a romantic comedy. Like every step I can follow up what was the consequence of which decision, and it all makes sense. And I'm really happy that I did that. But that's my main drive. It always has been.
Yeah, it's thinking about the difference between like being an economist or a cinematographer is like one might change your city in an economic way, maybe if you got into politics or something, but really no change happens without cultural change. And that's where art comes in. And I think art is far more dangerous in the sense of not in terms of making, or not in terms of the product, but in terms of making it. You can fail a lot harder at art. If you fail as an economist, unless you're embezzling money, people will just be like, oh, whatever, try again. But if you fail as an artist, people might hate you. That's way scarier. Like, I hated your message and you should jump in a river, and you're like, oh fuck, So it's a much more vulnerable position to take. But in my opinion, more important. But then again, I am also a DP.
Absolutely, but I'm much less scared about being hated than not being seen at all.
Sure. Yeah.
If you are hated, then it means then that okay, you put something radical out, and you are like provoking people or like challenging them, and of course nobody will. It's not possible that everybody loves what you do.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's not my fear. I have we say like tough skin on that. If you hate it, okay, let's talk about it. Why? I mean, it can have a lot of reasons. Why do you hate what I did, or like why don't you agree? Always up for conversation. Well, like let's put your word out, and exactly that's a good point. That let's start conversations through art. Let's open up topics, watch it, and then we can discuss or not discuss. But yeah,
right, yeah,
you can discuss with anyone else, but at least you are discussing.
Yeah. It's like that idea of I don't know, there's like a funny made-up name for it on the internet, but a lot of times if you want the right answer to a question on the internet, posit the wrong answer. Tell people like, hey, this is how you do something. And then in the comments, there'll just be 1,000 people saying you're wrong and this is how you're actually supposed to do it. And it's way more effective to do that than just ask the question. So in the same way, I feel like if you make a piece of art that pisses people off, that oftentimes can be the yin to that yang, so to speak. You can get the correct answer out of people by making them angry enough to want to correct you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a funny place. So what did you always know you go ahead?
Just wanted to add something to make things in the correct way, that it made me think about my student times, which was actually great because, as I said, I didn't climb the classical ladder.
Yeah.
What I really liked in those years, that yes, of course, we learned techniques. We know how to expose the film. We knew how to measure the light. But actually, they always said like, do whatever you want. Try and fail. Trial and error. And really, these years were so precious to be able to make mistakes, because I did like bunch of them, and I had a vision. I want to do this, but like, okay, let's do that. And wow, it didn't work out. So like, okay, how do I do it next time? But we had the equipment and the material and the people. I mean, we helped each other. So basically, that's what we did for long years, like working for each other on set in every kind of positions, and failed.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, because I realized like, okay, they say the clever people, they learn from the mistakes of the others. I don't agree. I think I learned from my own mistakes.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So, I mean, yeah, maybe there are people who can learn from the mistakes over there. No, I had to go through a lot, and I did a lot of mistakes, and it was in a protected environment where, yeah, of course, it was cool if your second year movie went to Cannes or whatever. So, and it did. So success also came, but because I always took the risk, and I always took the risk to fail, and maybe, yeah, I failed in that particular decision, lighting decision, but basically the risk was so that the stakes were so high in other decisions that it was still good enough to raise attention.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's the classic thing, right? Like whenever people say, is film school worth it? I'm like, well, you could probably learn what film school would teach you in a book or whatever, but the environment is far more important. That environment, that protected environment, as you said, to fail.
Totally. I mean, out of the film school, I think it would have been super hard to get these people to work free for you. Like,
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, the basic experience was like, we are a bunch of wannabe filmmakers there, and so that you can do your movie in your crew. I mean, as a cinematographer, you need at least, depending on the story and depending on your equipment, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people just for a low budget, very low budget, no budget short movie. It means if they help you, you're gonna help like 5, 6 times to them for free.
Right.
And that was the deal. But like, it's very hard to get this kind of resources in people who are like loving to make films just because you call them like, hey, I have an idea, come and work for me. And again, and again, and again.
Right.
So I think that's why that was the biggest advantage of film school. And of course, you learn a lot, yes, but this protected environment and experimenting and failing, which is not the case in a lot of film schools. Like a lot of places, you have a huge pressure of budget and the huge expectations of which festival you get into, and this pressure was much lower at my time back then. So like, we didn't go for it. This commercial pressure was much less. So we could fail much more, as I think people can fail recently.
Yeah. Did your college, had the film school been kind of established by that point, by the time you got there?
Oh yeah, it was actually a free academy based in the 60s. So I went to the West Berlin one. It's called the FFB, German Film and Television Academy. And when it started, it was really just a bunch of people who wanted to think about films together and make films together. So the divisions came later on, and they were more thinkers and filmmakers in a free space. So very briefly, that's the history of the West German Academy. That's why it's an academy, because it was kind of this self DIY, let's do it together thing.
Yeah.
And the East German one was more the divisions, classical, building up. So they had the not circle of both, say, like the methods, like the plan, how to teach filmmaking.
The film school I went to, my college, full university, the film school had started 2 years before I got there. So my class and I, which luckily we're all still friends and we all, work in LA together, so it's fine, but they did not. Now that it's the Arizona State Film School, I'll give them credit. Now it's amazing. They have their own stage. They have color correction suites. They're shooting film, I think. They've got all this equipment. It's great. And when I was there, they barely knew what to teach us, and we all had to fight over 1.5D. That's all they had. So that was more of a that's when I talk about like, oh, what you need film school. It's like, well, the friendships I made there were very important, but the stuff I learned didn't matter. That was the New York Film Academy I went to beforehand.
Most probably you learned how to fight.
Yeah.
And you fight yourself through 4 to 5.
Oh, and obviously, like, there was, like, you know, the people who, it was the classic, like, breakfast club, you know, there was, like, jocks, there was nerds, there was the whole thing. So, like, the people who are super film nerds or, like, just really good writers or whatever, you know, they would find people to get behind them, so they would get the 1.5D, and the rest of us would get, like, a beat-up DVX, of which there was, like, 2, you know. It's a very interesting time. But where was I going to go with this? Oh yeah, so cinematography, did that just feel like a natural form? You said you were a photographer before, but how did you know that cinematography was the move and not something more, I guess, practical, like being a first AC, which is is it just because you have that strong voice, I suppose, that certainly it took me a long time to learn how to hone. I'm much more comfortable as an AC. It's less stressful.
It was not obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, in Hungary, there were no female cinematographers at all. So maybe in documentaries sometimes or TV, but it's still very rare, especially in cinema. So there was no example for that. Nobody, I never had the idea of that. So like photography, yeah, that happens, but this category just didn't exist. And when I moved to Berlin, then it was the first time I saw a woman with a camera, which was actually Sophie Montaigne, a French cinematographer who was also our teacher. And there were some more examples later on, but in Berlin, I kind of could imagine it the first time, like actually I could be a cinematographer. So even though I did camera work back then in Budapest on these exercises, it was never really an option what you think about, what I thought about back then seriously. And then by time, I mean, when I realized like filmmaking, of course, obviously first like directing, because like that, but then later on on also at the art academy before, by doing video art, I understood that what I love the most is to create the image, and to create the image, meaning finding the form, finding the perfect form, and it's also the combination of being conceptual and being emotional.
Yeah.
And yes, I had, of course, I have a lot to say, but I realized that that's not my main goal. That's not my first drive.
Sure.
So I have my point of view on the world, but I also saw that, wow, there are people who are doing it much better. And actually, what is really my main interest is this part. Like, okay, there is the content and there is the input, and like, of course, there are plenty of different directors with different approaches. It's a big topic, like how a director and cinematographer works together. But it's like feeling the onion and like finding, okay, where is the middle, and work around it. But
right.
not, yeah. And I think I come more from this really conceptual part and very art house cinema, and because I think I really didn't wanna. I don't like kitsch. I don't like when a movie really pushes there to make you wanna cry, and like
right.
You know, this emotional pushing, like I don't know. I don't like it. I can't stand it actually. But like, okay, how to get the emotion without like overwhelming the viewer with effects, but like the real emotion, which is a much more complex human reaction or state. So I think that's the most exciting part for me in cinematography, to find to find a form. And then the practical part is also very exciting when you are a bit more alone. Like, of course, the look is still a common decision, but when you get into the, what kind of light sources I want to use for this? So when it gets to the more practical part, I love that too, but that's not where my main interest started. So I was never like, wow, I want to use this LED light. And that's the goal of my life.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man, once I get a hold of a sky panel, I'm gonna be so professional.
Exactly.
So
Vortex.
the vortexes are great. I have one right here.
Amazing.
I love them.
If I had known the vortex when I was 23, like,
Right.
Yeah.
I saw them demoing the 2x the Vortex 8 at NAB, and they just had it under a waterfall. They just put it under a waterfall and just let the waterfall fall on it for 5 days, and they're like, or 3 days, and they're like, look, you can use this wherever you want.
Amazing. You can really use it wherever, and it's a great light. It's a great light.
The little heavy though.
A lot of
did
vortexes.
you really?
Ooh, yeah.
Are they?
Absolutely.
Because you shot that in Berlin.
We shot that in Berlin. That's how I basically got into the project.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I guess that's a dumb question because I still pretty much, now I'm just talking about lights. I still pretty much only see sky panels on sets in LA, but I guess they got a bunch of vortexes in Berlin.
We got a bunch of vortexes in Berlin, but it's not so. So before the show, we basically were introduced to the vortexes, and so the gaffer told us like, look, they are even cooler than the sky panels. So we got a show, and sincerely, I haven't used the vortex before this shoot. So it was end of January, I think.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm pretty sure Vortex is an American company. Obviously, Ari is a German company, so we could save a lot on shipping if we just keep them on we don't have to send them to each other. So, you're saying that you're really into art house stuff, but obviously Pitch Perfect, not art house. I assume were you a fan of the first one? Because that one surprised me. I thought it was going to be dumb when I was a kid, or not whenever it came out years ago. And I really enjoyed it as someone who prefers like action films and stuff.
No, come on. If you grow up in Hungary, like, you are contaminated by long shots, like Benatar, Miklós, like it's art house cinema, it's long shots and amazing ones, really. So I'm joking here because that's a big influence on me as well. But I see my Hungarian colleagues all around the world, like cinematographer colleagues, and you just cannot undress this long shot.
All their reels are 30 minutes.
Absolutely, like 11 minutes, like the real long shots back then.
Yeah,
but that's we got it in our DNA, I think. so yeah, art house cinema was absolutely my starting point, and then later on musical. So my first short film at the Academy was a musical, so 8-minute film musical. And it's again because musical has an even bigger challenge in terms of combine the conceptual approach with the directing, with the music, with the set design. So it's a wonderful combination of you have to prepare these scenes a completely different way than a narrative scene. So that was my interest, and then Pitch Perfect was like merging a lot of things what I really loved. And yes, it's a comedy, and it's a completely different things because different thing to shoot, because it's not art house cinema. I mean, the main thing is the acting. The jokes has to sit and your main goal is to show these amazing performances, and it has to be funny, and you want to see the actors. But this show was really offering the option to be also cinematic around these scenes, and that's what was really cool. That in the transitions, or not just in the transitions, but there were some really challenging long shots. What we could make happen, so we could really think free in how do you still keep it funny and make a true vibe, make something special within the scene, or before the scene, or after the scene, and introduce Berlin. So basically the story is like Bumper goes to Berlin. That's why it was shot on Berlin, and a lot of on-location shoots. It was a really good challenge, I have to say.
Yeah. I mean, it looks, to your point about keeping it cinematic, like I remember the first movie coming out, and it looks like, you know, early mid 2000s comedy. There's like a very specific look there. And even just based on the trailer, you can see that this TV shows are getting so good these days. Like it looks far more like I would think of as a movie. It almost looks like it almost kind of looks like an action film. Like it's incredibly like stylized in a very cool way.
Yeah, why not? You know, you can go there, and still, I think there is still one main things what you shouldn't forget when shooting a comedy. But otherwise, exactly, it's merging different genres, and it also depends on the plot. Because, for example, in the pilot, the main character is a lot of time alone in the screen, or on the phone, or like going from somewhere to somewhere, or they are the two of them, and that allows you to make a different path, or like to it gives more flexibility in one way how to be cinematic compared to another scene when there are 5 of them in a room and it's like bang 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 bang, joke 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 joke. So then you really have to put your focus on that, what is happening in the performance. But still, like, if you really have the chance to think wild and to be bold, then why not to sneak in a bit more action in a comedy, or a bit more music? I mean, the musical parts were also. I just have one is my favorite scene when we really made a long shot, a long shot musical number, like 360, and in an art gallery with a lot of lights. And how do you build it up? How do you think it through? How do you change? How do you make a really flexible flying camera when you shoot everything around, and there is a choreography building up, and you still don't want to lose the main performance, and you still want to show that there is a lot of people, and it's a long shot, and you have a wonderful steady camera, but you need to move him up and down. And like, I love to think about clever and still doable solutions, like how to hide ramps, or how to change the key light during turning. And well,
by ramps you mean physical ramps, not like speed ramps?
No, physical ramps. Ramps, for example, like how to hide it smart. Like, and it's also, I think it was a good school to to be a kid in the Soviet times, like, okay, you don't have anything, but you want to do everything. So like, how do you fix things? How do you think creative out of nothing?
Yeah.
And it shows up a lot of times that you have a great idea, but you don't know how to, like, in this case, actually, we really had a lot of assets to work with. So amazing crew, amazing resources, and that's why we also could be so bold. But otherwise, sometimes a simple solution is just much better than hide the ramp, or like move them a bit here and a bit there, and okay, you have to make like 3 more rehearsals, but actually the result is amazing.
Yeah. Do you so you had not shot a comedy before this?
I did.
Yeah.
I did a miniseries in Berlin, but it was not my main profile. I did, but not not like this one.
Sure. Because I assume, was this, obviously there's a ton of choreography that goes into any musical number. Like everyone's got to hit their marks, both physically marks and just in general, you know, every department has to be absolutely on. But I assume in the more comedic sense, were all those scenes incredibly scripted, or was there a lot of, you know, improv going on, or what were some of the challenges there as a DP, just in the comedy sense that maybe you didn't, foresee, or maybe had to learn about?
It was very precisely scripted, but I mean, the actors were really amazing. And, you know, sometimes they just start to improvise, and then and it's amazing. And I'm sure that like a lot of things, lot of lines from this improv is gonna stay in. But in terms of breakdown, it was really precise. So I would say like 95% it's shot after the breakdown. So, and we were also very, very well prepped with Richie.
Yeah,
we were working with Richie together, and yeah, lots of coverage for sure. But still having the time for the creative part.
Right.
So that was the big challenge of this show. Like, okay, we don't want to lose the really creative shots, but we want to have the options to edit it the best way, like later. So lots of coverage.
Were you shooting multiple cameras, or were you just doing a lot of takes?
All the time, at least 2 cameras.
And
it was besides the long shots, so they were like crane steady combinations, but 2 or 3 cameras most of the time.
Yeah. Talk to me about your, I'm always fascinated by talking to television DPs, because there's an added element that I think a lot of people don't think about, which is your interaction with the other DPs that are working on the show. Very rarely is there one DP for the whole show. So you did 2 episodes, and your colleague did 4, is that correct?
Exactly. I did 3 and 4, and he did 1 to 5, 6.
So talk to me about how you guys kind of developed the look. If you developed the look together, did someone take lead? Like, what was your guys' working relationship like?
I mean, other DP is Mike Sprague, amazing DP and very good friend. And he was shooting the pilot. So obviously he was setting the look in terms. And I was of course, we discussed a lot about how should it look like and what keeps it together. But I also just went on set a lot of times and just looked what he was not done so much. Actually, of course, we discussed about the look, but a lot of times he just said like, be bold, do what you want. You do great stuff. I trust you. Do your thing.
Black and white? Hell yeah.
No, but you know, like even in terms of, there are some dream sequences, or when Bumper is dreaming, or there is this very romantic theater which turns into a nightmare, and then I'm totally free in my filter choices. Like, okay, how do I want to get this contrast between the 2 atmospheres of like really warm, romantic. So like I had a huge freedom in these terms, but we did the lens test together. We made the camera choice was basically given, so like by him. But we tested lights together, we tested lenses together, and when we discussed that. But he was the DP who's like the lead DP. So
gotcha.
But I really appreciated, like, okay, just do it.
Right.
And what was also nice that I sometimes when we had like huge scenes where we had like 4 or 5 cameras, I also jumped in to operate for him. And the same time, he was also jumping in to operate for me. And that was also like a nice gesture, but also experience the other DP to work, to operate for each other. That was also cool thing to do.
Yeah. So what camera package did you settle on then?
We shot the mini LF, like large format, and DNA lenses.
Gorge. I love those things. They're so good.
Totally. But it's also like, yeah, what for, you know? So it made sense for it. Yeah, of course I have lenses which I love. I love, for example, the Key 35. But like it always depends on the, again, back to the content, back to the plot. What is the film? Why do you choose the Key 35 or the DNA? Just because you love it? Just because it's trendy? Just because everybody's shooting it?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
And no, no, because there's a reason. Yeah, but the DNA was amazing for this.
Yeah. Was there? Oh, go ahead.
No. Just I have to mention that Todd, who was shooting the pilot, he also came to the lens test, and it was also nice just to. So me and Mike, we went through some options, and then later he jumped in and like. So it was also a common decision.
Yeah.
Richie was not in town yet.
How long have you known Mike?
But not for so long. I was shooting a project in Hungary, a Canadian movie, so basically half year before the show.
So, one thing that I've really loved about doing this podcast is by talking to, I think you're number 85 DPs. I've learned a lot, and I've also learned in that time that oftentimes DPs don't talk. Not that they don't try to, but you don't. It's kind of a singular job. You have your crew, but there's not often other DPs. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you learned from Mike potentially, or maybe anything you taught him that you can think of that comes to mind that maybe other people can glean from that working relationship.
Of course, I learned a lot from Mike. I learned a lot from Mike because Mike is a very experienced DP, and this range of budget, what we were handling, there were some decisions where what wouldn't come super automatically for me. I tell you an example. Like my highest budget feature films or projects before, like really didn't come close to this one. And the biggest challenge was that like there was zero overtime. So like you have to make your day. And 5 minutes maximum. And basically, if you see that you have a really tight schedule and you have a lot to shoot, and of course you have multiple cameras, but like, so you calculate, and this higher budget calculation that's why I was following up the previous series and like the second, third one, the first and the second one, and I have some experience in that, but for example, I see that, okay, for the third scene, we gotta be tight on schedule. And then I was asking him like, do you think it's doable, or what would you do? And like, come on, order a third dolly with a third dolly crew so that they can prepare, because you will win 30 minutes. And within this 30 minutes, they can prepare. You can make your day. 30 minutes overtime costs much more for the whole production rather than just order an extra dolly with 3 grip guys, and that's it. That's what they came for that 30 minutes. And this way of thinking was not new for me, but on this range, it was good to have this this routine in this, and it's a lot. It has a lot to do with production. It's not bad. I'm an economist, so I can think that way. But how to be bold there, and what to push, what not to push, where to find, where does it make sense to work for an half more day? How to make your compromises in this level of budget when it's like, okay, like every minute is like dang, 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 dang. You hear that, not the coins falling, but you hear.
Yeah.
So every decision you make, every little mistake you make, it costs a lot, and you just have to be really sure what you are doing and why you are doing it. And that's where I saw the security, like how secure he's dealing with this pressure and responsibility. And that was cool because, yeah, I could pick it up. And like he was just telling me, just listening to his way of thinking about some budget decisions, just like, okay, yeah, sure, he's right. But
Yeah,
like in a feature movie, like in my last feature film, I couldn't have done it just like, for that 30 minutes, maybe an extra crew.
Right.
Oh no. No.
Yeah. It must feel kind of scary that first time that happens where they're like, oh, we'll just throw $500,000 at this problem for 30 minutes. And you're like, excuse you? And they're like, yeah, well, it'll cost $2 million later. And you go, oh, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
And
the credit card problem, you know, spending tomorrow's money today.
As well. Yeah, as well.
The go ahead.
Not just that, but not to be afraid. Like, of course, to know what you want, and if you're not sure, then go around it and discuss it with your allies, with your partners in crime.
Yeah.
And what was never my attitude, like to act out of dominance, just like, okay, let's do it because I said it. No, of
Right.
course I have the last word on a lot of things, but if there is like okay, that might be problematic, just put it on the table and discuss it. And even if there is like huge pressure and like, she's not sure about that, no, it's better to discuss it and then with this security, you go for it. You go for your decision.
Does this is, I suppose, more of a personal question, but does confidence come easily to you?
Not at all.
Hey.
Not at all. And especially I go back to this like woman with a camera. I come from this like technical things. We don't give it to your hand. I mean, that's my background. And like slowly, no, the confidence came by doing the mistakes. You know, what I told you before, then, okay, I just know what I know. And I did that mistake, so I will not do that again. And I had the chance to make a lot of mistakes. And I think that's what gives you confidence that, first of all, you don't do those again. And secondly, you have this vision. You just want to do this. And it's so precious. So you just want to go for it. You know, you want to see how it looks. And it's a very childish desire. But I think if we lose it, then it's really pity. Because that's what is calling, like, we want to really create this film. And if you're not confident, then you will not do it.
So when you're on set and you've got your crew looking at you and you're not quite sure what to do, what's your method of being able to take a second and figure out? Because I know Roger Deakins has said a number of times the way that he would like take a minute to himself is he would just put his eye in the eyepiece and everyone would leave him alone, but really he would just be like spacing out, just like, shit, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Oh God.
That's great. Depends on if you need a word with a director. I mean, if it's something what you have to discuss, it's just give us a minute and like, let's talk. And I think it's always crucial. I mean, if you want to discuss something with him, there always have to be a second for this, or 2 minutes, or 5 minutes for this. So like, if there is something wrong, then go for it. If it's my decision, if we are talking about this moment, okay, it sounds funny, but I just ignore questions. I'm like, I'm like, I'm like really calm on set, you know. So I get it, but I also already got it. Like, wow, sometimes you look like an autist because you are like just, you know, you just go through and as if you wouldn't hear anything, and of course I filter because I understand this. This intention to do that, because there's always like plenty of questions and like just give me 2 minutes where I don't get these questions, and I know, but I think I just learned to filter it out.
Yeah.
And I stare somewhere higher than the eye level. I think I look at a lamp, so that they think that I'm looking at the light and like, should I change the color? I think I stare at a lamp.
Yeah. The advantage to having the beard is I can do this, and people think I'm really, you know, thinking real hard, when in reality I'm like, man, this is soft. But I did want to ask about we kind of touched on it a little bit, but in terms of building the look for the Pitch Perfect show, was there any sort of references that you guys were going by, or any kind of I don't know, lighting ethos that really stuck, or was it kind of more just trying to make it look the way it was supposed to be, you know, maybe more natural or something like that?
More things. Definitely, like, okay, Berlin, and what is Berlin offering, and what is the image of Berlin for the Americans, because it's also something what the show wants to show about Berlin, and what real Berlin is about, and the characters. And based on the characters, there were really clear visions, like build up around like who has what kind of world. And our style, which is also like, Mike has a very specific style, and I also have a style, and it's not the same, but it's really like close in a lot of terms of how do we deal with backlights and strong sources and contrast. So there was a big alliance in that from the beginning. So somehow it's a lucky case, because, you know, sometimes you talk about things and you mean something else, but in this case it was not like that. So we really understood each other very well in terms of how, contrast wise and large light source wise. I think there was an interesting difference as well, and it's again the plot that he had more the introduction parts where every character had their own looks, and, you know, it's a clear thing to set up the look of the DJ, or set up the first location when you get to know the guys, the gang. And I had later on more locations when they all get together somewhere else, so I cannot really locate it back to the original character look.
Yeah.
And I think it ended up in a ways that, for example, I might have a bit more colors in some scenes than he has, which is totally in the frame, because I mean, totally. I think it's actually nice as well, but you know, so it's, even if you talk about the look, like the story leads just to somewhere else, and the look is anyway defined in a lot of ways. Like, you work with the same gaffer, which is we had a really good gaffer, and we discussed these things. So, for example, it's also something. I watched all the dailies what Mike was shooting before, and where I had a dilemma, like, okay, I would do it like this, but I knew that he would do it like that. And then for example, it happened that I discussed it with the gaffer, like, actually, and then we said, like, oh, let's go for keeping the look in this case. But in another case, I was like, no, I think it's just so good that way, that I want to introduce a new color, I want to introduce a new backlight, or I want to lead it to the red. What didn't
Right.
happen before, but I think it's so good here that, and this depth we didn't discuss. So that was my freedom in this. But he watched my dailies as well, and we exchanged opinions.
Yeah. Well, the colorist is going to have to fix all of this. You know, you mentioned something that I thought was kind of interesting about a little bit earlier about making Berlin for an American audience. I'd love if you could kind of expand on that and tell me like what does Berlin look like for the American audience, and what does Berlin look like to Berliners, maybe in a visual sense.
Okay, I led myself into a trap with this.
Got him.
I mean, you know, the locations what we show in Berlin, they are in Berlin, so it is Berlin. The selection, actually, yeah, it's a long question, and okay, I live here for 15 years, and of course, I know the city from a different aspect as well. So,
Right.
And I know it's not just for Americans, but you know, Berlin has its calls. Like, what is it famous for? For the
Right.
clubbing scene, there are a lot of things which is not just the clubbing scene, but it's a strong part in the series. And anyway, there is this European American contrast jokes, like they pop up all the time. Also the history, also. So maybe I would just put it in a different way that yeah, okay, it highlights the Berlin aspects which are like widely known, but like living here, it also offers a lot of other things which might I have no space in a comedy like Pitch Perfect.
Right.
Why not? So the graffiti, the street art,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
tattooing, just like that. But yeah,
It is a very,
so Berlin is much more than that. But maybe obviously you cannot show everything in
yeah.
serious.
Well,
But I
yeah,
take it.
because you've got like the classic Breaking Bad did it, you know, I think popularized this joke, but obviously the anytime an American production goes to Mexico, everything just becomes sepia toned. They just put like a tobacco 5 on the lens and they're like, Mexico. Berlin is just like concrete. just
Berlin is just
brutalist
like
brutalist
concrete and
architecture in gray. Yeah. He sat the hell out of it.
yeah,
Is there
with some graffiti, which is also like desaturated.
yeah. Yeah. They only sell graffiti in black, gray, and deep red.
Yeah.
I did want to know, because this is a question that comes from an uneducated mind, but obviously German filmmaking, French filmmaking, you know, various pockets of Europe have their own kind of looks, and I was wondering if you could kind of inform me, I suppose, on what differences you've noticed between a general like German cinematographer, what their strokes tend to be versus what you've seen more in like American media.
It's hard to generalize. It's hard to say. I would see different methods of working, but no, I don't think.
It is kind of, I will say it is kind of a dumb question, especially nowadays, because I guess that's more of a historical question, because nowadays everyone kind of steals from each other. You know, we have access to streaming from other countries. We make tons of stuff on Criterion, you know, Scorsese's world cinema projects, stuff that you wouldn't have access to even 20 years ago, without really trying to get a hold of it or knowing about it. Whereas now it does feel like a lot of media is all kind of melting potted up a bit.
That's definitely true, especially in this since the streaming platforms took over. So like absolutely now every story, with a bit of exaggeration, like each story could be shot in each city.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely merging in a lot of terms. And wow, if we are talking in very general, then I think these streaming platforms are trying to highlight exactly the main lines of these cities where they are taking place of, and it's more about choosing. So it's more about set design, choosing the colors. Okay, what are the colors in France? What are the colors in Berlin? So for example, if it's a vivid comedy, it has different saturation and different colors in the US than in France or than in Germany. And
right.
at the same time, on the other hand, if it's a desaturated thriller and like very blue, very gray, it also has a different touch. But it's so general what I'm saying, that we should go more in examples and details. So it's hard to say exactly because there is this huge streaming melting pot everywhere around.
The thing that struck me as funny in film school was we had a few, foreign exchange students or whatever, and they were all fascinated by the fact that we really did use red Solo cups. They all thought that like movies invented the red party cup, and then they like went to their first party and they're like, holy shit, you guys do have the red party cups. And we're like, yeah, what about?
Really? I don't believe.
Yeah. Can I buy these? You're like, they're $10. You can, they're $3. You can have as many as you want. That's the American look is red party cups. That's the American comedy look. That was a big part of Pitch Perfect, the first movie.
Totally. Yeah, I've never seen any in my life, although I've been there.
Have you not really?
So maybe.
That's funny.
I would say the same. Like you really use it.
Hold on.
Yeah, but come on. For example, how the
here we go. I got one right here.
Berliner Brezelfest is shown in. Oh yeah, okay, it exists. That's right. Oh, the Brezelfest is. There is a traditional German fest in the comedy. Come on, it would never look that way. So it's completely a fiction. Like, okay, how Americans would imagine that a Brezelfest, like with all traditional clothes, would look. And yeah, it's funny, but it's like it's a fiction. It's completely made up, but it's fun.
Yeah, we're coming up on time a little bit. So I will let you go, but I asked the same two questions of everyone at the end of the podcast, and they are as follows. First one, if you were to, obviously it's a television show, so it's a little more difficult, but if you were to program a double feature with Bumper in Berlin, what would you make the other film or series? And it can't be one of the other pitch. It can't be the other Pitch Perfects. Double feature. Like people are going to go to the theater and see, I don't know, the pilot, or maybe these people have really, they've had a lot of coffee. They can watch the whole series. But what would be the second film in the double feature?
Okay, this is funny. But I played Cherbourg. It's a very old musical from a French musical. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Okay.
Cutting the back then.
I'll have to look that up.
That's funny. Yeah, I thought that would be like a fun
60s.
question when I came up with it, and it stumps everyone. And I'm like, damn, that's way harder than I didn't think it was gonna be that hard. The second question, everyone likes to talk about, oh, what's the best piece of advice you ever got? No. What's the worst piece of advice you ever got?
For cinematographers,
Yes. I mean, I guess life advice counts too, but
take a job what you actually don't want to do. You just do it for the money. If you don't find any drive in you, any inspiration, then don't take it. If you cannot connect to it, then don't do it.
yeah, that can be especially difficult depending on where you live, right? Because like sometimes you go on a 4-month dry spell, no one offers you anything, and then you get offered some terrible job, but you're like, shit, I need to pay the rent.
That's yeah, sure, but that's my advice, because I think it's worth it. Yeah, and I was really poor for a very long time, but I just didn't want to do things what I really cannot connect to, or I didn't see that, okay, that's what I'm gonna learn from it. I really have to do it, because at the end of the day, it gives you a good selection of recommendations. You know? So like thinking about it that, okay, you do it well, what you do, and they're gonna call you, then it's based on that, what you wanna do. So you don't want to get into circles what is not interesting for you.
Well, and also I think something that people, obviously this should be the case in any job, but especially in a creative field, it's kind of implied that, especially if you're going to be doing it for less money than you should, artists need creative nourishment. It's not necessarily about commerce or the end product or whether how many tickets you're going to sell. Most artists get into creating because they want to learn something about themselves or learn something about their peers, and share that knowledge. And if you can't have that, it really sucks. It really it makes the job so much harder when you're just trying to dig from an empty well.
I think it doesn't worth it.
Yeah.
Really. But it's of course a choice for everyone, but I prefer to have less but good. That on the long term, I think it works out better. You're gonna do things what you really go for.
Yeah, and it'll also kind of keep you accountable, because I'm sure you've, well, maybe not you, but I've certainly done jobs where, as a younger lad, where I didn't want to do it, so I phoned it in, and it's a lot easier to phone it in on a job you just do not give a shit about, and that's not good. That's not good. They hired you, so you do have to try, but that's a toughie.
But I think it applies only for cinematographers. It doesn't apply for technical crew. Like,
yeah.
As a gaffer, as a first AC, as a lighting, just go and do it and learn it. But as a cinematographer, you really need your inspiration.
Yeah,
and
you don't have to be inspired to pull focus.
Sometimes you do, but
the director's watching the monitor and you're just kind of like fiddling with the back of the focus ring. You're like, what? Oh yeah, no, it'll be fine. I put it at F16. Everything's in focus. Who cares? Well, thank you so much for talking with me this evening, depending on where you are. I really appreciate it. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having this chance to talk to you. Have a good day. It was a good one. I can tell you it was.
Oh, once I get to your time, I'll let you know how good mine went as well. But yeah, please, next time you do something, please come back, and I'd love to talk with you about that too.
Thank you so much.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F at our Mapbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.